Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I said good morning, but I should say good afternoon, really, because most of you are in the afternoon. Here it's still, actually, no, that's not true. It's afternoon, so yes. There'll be for sure some people also in the morning somewhere, depending where you're joining from, but welcome. So today, this is one of the largest markets. Is one of the largest markets that still requires a lot of demand for electricity, as you know, and over the last few years, India has done a great job to get really affordable solar energy into the grid. And now the next step is, of course, to make all of this energy dispatchable so that we can go towards a more and more renewable matrix over time. So this is what we are talking about today, how the battery market is going to develop in India, what is being done and what is expected for the future. With us today, two experts in the topic, working for many years in this industry that are going to give us a little bit of an idea of how it's working and how it's going to pan out. I'd like to ask Rahul to introduce himself first of all. Welcome, Rahul. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your experience? And please unmute your microphone.
Thanks, Belen. Hi, everyone. This is Rahul Walawalkar. I am president and founder of India Energy Storage Alliance. I'm also currently chair of Global Energy Storage Alliance and have been working on energy storage space for now almost 15 years with customized energy solutions where I lead our global emerging technology practice.
That is great, Rahul. Thank you very much. Rahul and I actually met in an energy storage conference by the World Bank, so there's a lot of work happening internationally as well. And I'd like to invite Aditya also to introduce yourself. Please, you've also been working a few years on this.
Thanks, Belen. Hi, everyone. I'm Aditya Trivedi. I am from AES. Well, I don't share great experience like Rahul. I just want to be very clear. But yes, I've been working on the power sector for almost over a decade now. And I've been focused on energy storage for the last few years. And Rahul has been really instrumental in what we've been doing in India. We are very much focused on India, and as AES, we have built India's first and largest grid-scale energy storage project. So going forward, I'll be sharing some of our experiences there. Over to you, Belen.
And AES has experience everywhere. It's not only in India, but I mean, it will be really interesting to hear what you guys are doing there. So this is a truly international webinar. Usually we have someone from Germany, a few people from Germany, Algeria, I see South Africa here. What are the Indians? I hope there's some Indians in the house. I'm sure there are. Don't be shy, introduce yourselves, use the chat. Without further ado, I'll ask Rahul, if you can unmute yourself, share your screen, and we'll start with your presentation. That'll be great, and then we can take it from there. So let me just tell you guys how this is going to go. So at the beginning, we're going to have a presentation by Rahul, then we're going to have a presentation by Aditya, and then after that, we will take questions from the audience. So send your questions by the Q&A, not the chat. The chat is for other kinds of, the Q&A at the bottom in the little box, and then we'll try and take as many of those as we can. But for now, go ahead, Rahul, tell us how it's going to pan out then.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Once again, this is Rahul, and I'm going to provide a quick overview about the energy storage opportunity in India. So to start with, as most of you are familiar, India is growing very fast. India currently has a grid which has a total installed capacity of around 360 gigawatt. And India has set a very ambitious roadmap for increasing the renewable penetration under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. So one of the key component of this is solar. India has set a very ambitious roadmap for deploying more than 100 gigawatt of solar by 2022. In fact, most recently, Prime Minister Modi has also increased the scale whereby 2030, India is targeting now over 450 gigawatt of renewables. A majority of that is expected to come from solar. So it is not just next 2 or 3 years, but India is expected to sustain this growth of solar deployments for next decade to come. And there was a lot of skepticism when originally in 2013, India had launched a national solar mission with a target of 20 gigawatt for 2022. because that time India had hardly maybe 1 gigawatt or not even 1 gigawatt, actually less than 100 megawatt of solar deployed. So most of the experts were skeptic if India will be able to reach this 20 gigawatt. But in 2014, Prime Minister Modi increased the target, and already in 2018, India crossed the 20 gigawatt, which was the original target for 2022. So right now, most of the experts do feel that India will easily meet the 100 gigawatt target. It may be plus minus 1 or 2 years, depending on if you are talking to the government expert or industry experts. But India is definitely looking at scaling up renewable deployment, particularly solar, where the prices of solar have come down very rapidly. The first auctions or the initial projects which were done back in 2013, 2014, the cost of solar energy was somewhere around 17 rupees, which at that time, looking at the currency conversion rate, would be similar to around 35 cents per kilowatt hour. Whereas most recent auctions, it has come down to around 2 rupee 50 paise or 2.5 rupees per kilowatt hour. So we have seen a tremendous decline in the cost of solar with the rapid deployment of solar technologies. At the same time, India has a much longer history for deploying wind. India started deploying wind in early 1990s, and India has also a very robust manufacturing base for wind energy, where a number of companies, including Suzlon, which is an Indian company, as well as Regen Powertech and other global giants, including GE, Gamesa, Vestas, all of them have manufacturing capacity in India. And it is expected that by 2022, India would reach around 60 gigawatt of wind deployment. And going to 2025-26, we are expecting India will cross 100 gigawatt of wind deployment. Most recently, MNRE, which is Ministry for New and Renewable Energy, they are also giving support for hybrid projects, whereas most of you are familiar, the wind and solar energy have slightly different availability patterns, where wind is available more during evenings or early morning hours, and solar energy obviously is available during the day. So India has pushed for a hybrid policy where they are looking at integrating wind and solar projects jointly, and also now enabling addition of storage to this. Now, you are familiar with probably the California duck curve, which was originally made famous by California ISO, when in 2013 they did some simulations and showed the 2020 requirement of net load on the California electric grid, where with all the new solar coming in, the effective net load which is procured from the grid is very low during the afternoon. And that creates a significant issue, where one is the base load generation requirement is lower during the afternoon. So you may have to shut down some of the plants. And in the evening, still beyond 5 p.m., 6 p.m., when the sun is not shining, you still have to meet the evening peak load. And that creates a significant increase in the ramping and flexible generation required. Now, in case of India, we are expecting similar phenomenon. We are calling it an Indian camel curve because of the dual hum both in the morning and in the evening. But this was the projection which we had done a few years back, looking at the 100 gigawatt solar penetration in 2022 and how it would create a challenge for India. But apart from the system level issues, when you're looking at integrating large wind and solar farms, you also need to take care of grid discipline at a individual wind farm or solar farm level or at a state level. And this is the area where energy storage is expected to play a very critical role. The left-hand side chart shows how adding a very small amount of storage. So in this case, we have done this simulation for a smaller wind farm with 18 megawatt wind, with 4 megawatt, 1 megawatt hour of ESS with a power batteries such as lithium titanate or lithium NMC type batteries, where we showed that by using this small amount of storage, you can actually stabilize the wind energy output into 5-minute step curve, which is represented in the pink curve on the left-hand side. And this is very important right now for India, because Indian government has, the regulators have pushed for what is called as deviation settlement mechanism, where all the renewable energy generators have to provide a day ahead schedule in terms of the forecast, and they can revise it up to 8 times during the day if there is change in the forecast. But ultimately, within a 15-minute block, they have to be within the certain band of the forecasted energy. And that's where this is going to be very important, where rather than just hoping for forecasting to solve all the problems, by adding a small amount of storage can actually provide a significant flexibility and hedge against potential fines which will be levied against renewable developers. Similarly, the right-hand side chart is giving an example of solar uh, solar project where we looked at city of Port Blair, which is part of the Andaman Nicobar Islands in India, where right now the entire grid is powered by diesel generators, and you have to actually ship this diesel almost 1200 kilometers on a diesel fired boats, and then use it for generating the electricity on this. And because of the cloud cover and if you add solar, it does not completely eliminate diesel generation, but in fact, because you are seeing significant ramping, which is represented by the blue curve in the back on the backside on the right-hand side chart, you actually may need to keep certain diesel generators on standby mode just for meeting the ramping requirement. And what we demonstrated that by adding again a small amount of storage, you can significantly cut down the diesel usage for such application, where even with just a 1 megawatt hour energy storage, it can support a 5 megawatt solar farm, and it can eliminate almost more than 90% of the diesel usage required for the standby operation. So these type of cases are generating a strong interest, and fueled by some of the policy changes, we expect tremendous growth in this. The other area in India is till maybe a couple of years back, we used to always quote that India has almost 300 million people who are not connected to the grid. Officially, now all the villages in India are electrified, but still there are challenges related to the power quality and reliability. Right now, most of these regions do not get 24/7 power, or even when they are getting power, there are significant issues in power quality in terms of the voltage fluctuations. So we believe that microgrids is a concept going to be very important for India, and especially grid-enabled microgrids can play a key role in economic development of remote areas. At the same time, these microgrids are not only limited for rural areas. We are seeing more than 300 townships like the one which you are seeing on the bottom left image. And it is not just a graphical image, it is actually a real township. In fact, I live in the building right in the center of it, so I know it is real. So there are almost more than 300 such private townships getting built all over India, which serve maybe few thousand residents along with schools or small commercial and industrial estate with a peak load of maybe around 5 megawatt. Some of these bigger townships which have industries also built around it could have a peak load of around 50 megawatt. And there is a growing interest in looking at distributed solar or similar applications, because in India, these commercial industrial townships end up facing very significantly higher electricity tariff from the distribution companies. So integrating renewables and storage is a very cost-effective solution for these townships. So as the India Energy Storage Alliance, we have an initiative called Microgrid Initiative for Campus and Rural Opportunities, which is trying to address some of the policy barriers in this area and also bring together various stakeholders to try to accelerate deployment of microgrids in India. On the policy side, sometimes it feels that, oh, India is suddenly woken up to the need for energy storage. But we have been working on this for almost last 7 years. In 2013, Ministry of Power and Central Electricity Agency, they created a task force for evaluating integration of large-scale renewables in India, where first time we were invited and we were able to highlight need for energy storage. And since then, there was an energy storage roadmap developed. There was a policy paper developed for looking at role of energy storage for improving power quality and reliability back in 2014. And since then, we have seen number of steps taken to try to remove barriers for energy storage in India. And this year, MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, finalized the National Energy Storage Mission, as well as Niti Aayog, which is a central policy think tank, created a national mission for transformative mobility. And on the EV side, again, it has taken around 5-6 years, where from the original launch of the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan in 2013, Indian government as well as states have taken the various steps to try to create a enabling environment for adoption of EVs. And also there is now growing focus on EV manufacturing in India. And we'll talk more about that towards the end of the presentation. So looking at both these opportunities in terms of the stationary and EV. So first I'll talk more about stationary market. And one thing which sometimes international audience or experts miss out about India is in India, actually, there is already a very strong existing market for energy storage. India is one of the largest markets for lead acid batteries, which are primarily used for home or small commercial backup, which is in India, it is called as inverters, basically converting the DC power from the batteries into AC for using in the homes and small commercial installations. Also, India has a very strong telecom industry with more than 600,000 telecom towers, and majority of these telecom towers use diesel generators as a backup. And so as a result, almost every telecom tower has around 10 to 15 kilowatt hour of batteries included. So considering these existing applications as well as the growing need for renewable integration, power quality, microgrids, we expect that the Indian market between the base year of 2018 going to 2026 would be somewhere between 250 to 360 gigawatt hour. Out of which majority of the market, maybe around 70-75% of the market will be behind the meter. And this is the area where we are super excited about India, because although as IESA, we are working a lot on trying to address policies at the government level, majority of the business cases for the behind the meter applications already exist. And as soon as better technologies are available and they can be finance, this market can be tapped in a relatively fast fashion. No one has to wait for any approvals from any government officials. At the same time, if the national storage mission and related policies are implemented, then we can see even a faster growth for the grid scale storage deployments in India. Similarly, on the electric vehicle side, our projections suggest that India would be somewhere between 110 to 150 gigawatt hour of demand for batteries for these vehicles. Within these, again, there are some segments such as electric two-wheelers and low-speed three-wheelers, which are currently relying on lead-acid batteries. But we see, along with the trend happening around the world, in India, majority of the market for the transportation sector will rely on various types of lithium-ion batteries. And already between telecom and EVs, India has actually deployed more than 4 gigawatt hour of lithium-ion batteries in last 3-4 years. So this is something which people miss out, because on the grid scale side, as Aditya will explain, the 10 megawatt hour project done by ES is the largest, but at the same time, there is a large deployment taking place on a distributed scale, which is cumulatively, given the size of India, is adding up significant numbers. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. This was an announcement done by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi himself last year, where during the inauguration of the first assembly of the International Solar Alliance, he himself mentioned that India is working on the national storage mission, and government is focusing on the demand creation as well as indigenous manufacturing and innovation for energy storage. Now, this brings us to one of the biggest policy announcements, which you will hear shortly, where Indian government is about to launch a very ambitious giga-scale battery manufacturing initiative, where Indian government is targeting at least 50 gigawatt hour of cell manufacturing by 2024 under this. And the reason for this is, one is all of us here in India and policymakers have realized that this batteries is going to be the next big market. Over the last 20 years, India has missed number of times the manufacturing opportunities, be it in terms of semiconductor manufacturing, laptops, cell phones, or solar panels. But in terms of this next opportunity coming up, Indian government would like to have at least some manufacturing in India. Right now, in terms of areas like solar or semiconductors, India imports more than 95-97% of the value addition from other countries, whereas here India would like to get at least 20-25% local reliance. So, and this is also very important from the national energy security point, and that's where we as an industry alliance are very confident that this time government will step up with their promises, and if industry also agrees to that, we can have a robust ecosystem for both R&D as well as manufacturing of energy storage in India in next 4 or 5 years. So to end, I would just like to give a small plug for India Energy Storage Alliance, which was created in 2012 by Customized Energy Solutions. IESA could be your gateway for understanding energy storage and EV markets in India. IESA has grown from just 5 members, which launched the alliance in 2012, to over 94 members. So here are the members which comprise of battery manufacturers, power electronic companies, companies working on EV and EV charging infrastructure, companies involved in transmission, distribution, utilities, research and development agencies. So we have a very wide ecosystem of members for IESA, and also they come from wide geography. Majority of the members do have presence in India, so around 65 plus members have presence in India, but we have representation from US, Europe, as well as APAC region, who are actively participating in various IESA activities. So with that, I would like to hand it back to Belen, and I'll be happy to take any questions. You can type those in the question and answer box, and after Aditya's presentation, both of us, we can answer them jointly. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rahul, and thank you very much for this very interesting presentation and the context as well. I would ask you please to stop sharing your screen so that we can ask Aditya to prepare his. And it's been really interesting. We already have a few questions. We'll get to them, after they're both done. And I also have my own questions. They're all about numbers and costs. This is like a little bit what I like to ask. Just put in the fine detail on things. But Aditya, if you can please remember to unmute your microphone. And keep sending the questions, guys. Just use the Q&A box, okay? We'll get to them at the end. Okay, I can see the screen, it's fine. You ready to go?
Thanks, Rahul, for that great introduction about the market. And I can only second whatever Rahul has said. And India is a very dynamic market. And one thing which is very important and the biggest driver in the Indian market is the commitment by the government, which is now taking a shape. The market has started picking up. While I'll take a step back and just briefly talk about AES, what we've been doing, and then I'll talk about our Delhi project. So quickly, so AES, we are a global power company headquartered in the US, Arlington, Virginia. And we are basically operators of large grid connected power plants. We are close to 32,000 megawatts and another around 5,000 megawatts under construction. We have been in India for quite some time now, since 1992. Primarily, we've been on the generation side, but globally, we are into both generation and distribution of energies. Coming straight away to storage. I would take some time here and just briefly talk about what is battery storage and what is that we are going to talk about here. Battery storage is nothing but, on a grid scale, we are using batteries along with ancillary infrastructure to perform some grid management services. As AES, we broadly divide it into three categories, which is network related, generation related, and usage related. Network is optimizing the transmission and distribution network. When it comes to generation, we have we look at how we can manage the frequency, how we can manage the peak. In countries where they have spinning reserves, we can enhance generation there. And when it comes to usage, we have black start, energy arbitrage, and deviation settlement, which is very specific to India. What cuts across is the renewable integration and microgrids, as Rahul said, because these are much wider applications and they cut across the network, the generation, and the usage as well. AES has been working on storage since early 2000. We built our first energy storage project, a 2 megawatt system way back in 2007. And since then, we have built more than 500 megawatts. One of the latest one is the project in Delhi, which is what I'm going to talk about more. So the 10 megawatt, this is a 10 megawatt 1 hour system. And this project has been developed at a power station owned by Tata Power, which is the distribution company in Delhi. Tata Power Delhi Distribution Company owns part of the distribution system network in Delhi. They are serving a load of around 2000 megawatts. This project has been jointly developed by AES and Mitsubishi. The technology that we have used is provided by Fluence. Fluence is a company which has been jointly owned by AES and Siemens. While AES developed its own technology called grid scale technology called Advancion over the last decade, Siemens had their own solution. So in early 2018, AES and Siemens joined hand and formed a company called Fluence. And now the technologies developed by AES and Siemens, they house in this company. And they are more like a product company. AES continues to be a developer. So we build, own, and operate these assets. Fluence is the solution provider. This project has been under discussion for long, but we actually broke the ground in April 2018, and it took just about 10 months to complete. And why 10 months? Because it was housed in a building wherein we started from ground, building the base for the building, and then the actual battery installation was done just a couple of months. We inaugurated the project in March 2019, and it has since then been in operation. So when we were actually looking at this project, right, we had certain issues. We have been in discussion with Tata Power. They, being an operator of the system, they identified certain challenges that they were facing. The whole idea of this project was to see that whether we can actually help Tata Power Delhi, and the design of the solution was built around these parameters, which is managing sustained deviation penalty, disposal of surplus power, power quality issues, peak load management, capex deferral. This is more for the transmission system, and the frequency management. I'll talk a little bit in detail about all of those applications that we're trying to showcase here. Typically, as Rahul also mentioned, there is a deviation settlement mechanism in India, wherein the system operators, the developers have to work collectively to maintain the whatever forecast they've given. In India, it is quite unpredictable, and all the system operators, the utilities face a tough time in actually managing it and sticking to the forecast that has been given. In case they don't follow the forecast, there are huge penalties. Tata Power has been facing a lot of those challenges. One of the application and which has been mostly used until now by Tata Power has been to manage this deviation settlement. The way it works is, as per the guidelines, they are supposed to follow the forecast, and then there's a bandwidth given to them for a deviation. In Tata Power's case, it is 38 megawatts. So this is always a percentage of the total area that they are serving, total capacity that they are serving. And for them, that 38 megawatt is the deviation that they are allowed. The penalty is even higher. So the penalty is decided every time they breach that 38 megawatt deviation. And the penalty is quite high when the deviation is coupled with the frequency. So in this case, what we are actually, what you see the arrows here are the charging, the upward arrows are for charging and downward for discharging. So what happens is, where this is, the red lines are where they are supposed to actually go down or go up. The BESS system has been helping them in managing these deviations. Every time they're reaching the capacity, the 10 megawatt energy system is always online. It is helping them in avoiding those violations. This has been so far successful. Tata Power has been able to have some savings by deploying this BESS asset. Coming to the next, this is a very typical challenge. So Delhi has extreme weathers. We have very hot summers and very cold winters, and in between we have, like, a very sultry weather. So if you look at Delhi as a whole, right, the between summers and winters, the gap between the peak demand is as high as 1500 megawatt. I'm talking about Delhi, not just Tata Power Delhi. So you can see the curves, they vary a lot. It makes their job very difficult. As I said, just similar to the DSM, they have to tie up for power purchases. There's always a deviation, and at times they have excess power, sometimes they have less power. So in order to manage that, they are using this asset to bridge those gaps, wherein, whenever there's an excess, they use this asset to charge the system, and when they are in deficit, they actually use the energy which is available. By doing this, they are actually avoiding using the energy in the spot market. So when they are when they are in deficit, they end up buying expensive power from spot. They have been able to avoid some of those expenses here. Another great application, which is very typical to all the distribution companies, is the reactive power. Because of all these fluctuations, there's a deviation in the reactive power on the grid, and the regulator also has a penalty for every time that the distribution company doesn't balance the reactive power. So when we say battery energy storage, while it can provide power, it also provides you with reactive power, both active and reactive power. So what we are seeing here is a graph of typically what Tata Power has been, the amount of penalties that they've been being paid the last 3 years. It is 1.3 crores, 2.2 crores, and last year it was 5.4 crores. This year, Tata Power is now using this BESS asset to manage some of those reactive power issues. And the way the system works is the full 10 megawatt capacity can be actually used as reactive power. So that 10 megawatt of reactive power can be actually injected onto the grid. And so it's not just energy, it is both active and reactive power that can be managed. That's another application which Tata Power is testing in this asset. The results are awaited, and we'll share some experiences in future. Another use case that Tata Power did identify in this case was this system has been deployed at their substation. They have 2 transformers. And typically the loads, each transformer has a separate load and separate segment to cater to. Many times it does happen that one of the transformers gets overloaded because of the segment it is serving. We have identified that energy storage can actually help in better managing that those transformers and splitting the load, so that whenever a particular transformer is overloaded, that power can be actually taken out and used it for the best, and accordingly putting it back whenever needed. So these are the key applications which Tata Power is testing for this asset in Delhi. But and now I'm coming to the frequency, which is the very basic application that battery based, and when I say battery based, lithium ion battery based are very good at, which is managing the frequency. While frequency is not so critical for Tata Power because they don't get penalized for it, but if they're able to manage the frequency as well, they will be able to manage the penalties which is associated because of the frequency variation. And what I'm showing you here right now is this Delhi asset is actually on the grid, and this is connected, and India has a single grid. It's a very large grid, and it actually responds to the frequency. So what I'm showing you here is an instance from 3rd April, which was just after inauguration of this asset, wherein there was a huge sag in the frequency. And you can say the frequency started at 130, at around 130, the frequency started dropping from 49.95 hertz. It went down, and it went all the way down to 49.7. And what you can see is the best asset which was corrected online. It was in automated mode. Every time there was a deviation in the frequency, the asset was actually trying to respond to the frequency, and it was doing that instantaneously. What we are trying to prove here is batteries are fast and they can respond instantaneously. Because this is a very small asset, it's just 10 megawatt on a huge grid, it was not actually showing any results to the frequency. But had it been sufficient capacity on the grid, this issue would have not been there, and the batteries would have been able to address it at the very beginning, and we would have had a much flatter frequency. Another thing which is very important to note, that this instance lasted from 130 to all the way up to 4, which is like 2.5 hours, more than 2.5 hours. And while it is said that we have ancillary services available in the market and which should be able to manage the grid, but it did not happen. And the result is in front of you, a frequency deviation which lasted for hours onto the grid. The point that I'm trying to make here is batteries can do this job much efficiently, and while we have other services to supplement it, batteries can take precedence. With that, I would like to stop and go back to my Belen.
Sure, thank you very much, Aditya. And thank you very much for stopping sharing right away. So most of you have realized that Rahul's been like this and he's been answering a lot of your questions. You've done a great job, Rahul. So why don't you start telling us basically what people are asking and, generate their reply, because I've seen that you've gotten through a lot of them. Just if you give us a little bit of context on what people are asking you, is a lot about technology, right? We can't hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, there are some questions in terms of what are the technologies being used in India, particularly within the lead acid battery chemistry, where again, as since in India, there are a number of different applications. So we have seen people still using flooded lead acid batteries, but also for number of commercial industrial applications, the VRLA or the valve regulated lead acid batteries are being used. For some of the solar applications where people are now trying to use batteries more often, people are also going for newer type of batteries such as the gel batteries, which can provide better life. And also recently we have seen most of the existing lead acid battery companies also trying to explore opportunities in advanced lead acid batteries, where people are looking at different approaches such as lead carbon or bipolar batteries. And these are mainly done for improving either the C rate, which is the charge discharge rate, because typically a lead acid battery is meant to be charged over a 10 hours period, whereas people are looking at batteries which can be charged in 2 hours or less. So that's one of the goals for advanced lead acid batteries. But these are again some of the applications where lithium ion batteries are now very well suited. Traditionally, people were worried about the price point of the lithium ion batteries, but as Aditya can elaborate, actually the prices have come down by more than almost 8 to 9x in last 10 years. So maybe I'll hand it over to Aditya to maybe talk about some of the price reduction for lithium ion batteries.
Go on, Aditya. This just leaves you the hard questions, you know. Sorry, we can't hear you. Can you just unmute your microphone, please?
Yeah, I have something to just show. I'll just put it up front, which I'm sure
Sure, go ahead.
people must have seen in the past, but just to reiterate, sorry for the screen. Just a sec. Yeah. So I think this is just to second to what Rahul has been saying. This is a report which was published by BNEF, and this clearly shows the decline in the battery prices. We completely second that, because we have been there in the industry trying to build assets wherein the battery prices are 1,000, and now they are now in the range of somewhere around 200. And so this is a curve which is actually the battery, basically lithium ion batteries are actually following. Our sense is this is very likely to follow this price and may go even further down, given that the way the battery demand of batteries is going up. Well, this specifically talks about lithium ion. Rahul, you can help me in answering that. Within lithium ion, there are a lot of other technologies which have been coming up. My sense is, and this is purely coming from our previous experiences, that lithium ion batteries is going to be there in the market for long, given that they have already reached to a stable market. There's a sufficient supply chain which is being developed. So lithium ion the demand will continue. There's enough supply, and we expect the prices to follow this curve.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Aditya. So there was also a question about, particularly in terms of the environmental issues, or if we should be considering some of the newer battery chemistries which are still under development. And I agree with Aditya that as a India Energy Storage Alliance, our expectation is that both lead acid and lithium ion batteries will continue to dominate the industry for next at least 10 years. Because both of them have now built a huge amount of manufacturing capacity. There is a sufficient supply chain network which is there. People are trained to maintain and manage these technologies, and depending on the application, like if you're using it for backup applications, emergency applications, then lead acid batteries still do meet the needs. Even lead acid batteries are used as the starter batteries for all the vehicles, not just for EVs. So lead acid batteries have a number of applications where they will continue to be seen, but all the emerging applications such as electric vehicles, renewable integrations, we are seeing a very strong preference for the lithium-ion batteries. Within lithium-ion batteries, there are different type of chemistries like nickel, cobalt, aluminium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, lithium iron phosphate, lithium titanate oxide. So depending on the application, different chemistries can be applied, and number of time people focus only on cost, but there are other parameters where also there have been significant improvement, particularly in terms of energy density. I think when AES deployed their first energy grid scale energy storage project back in 2008-2009, they had around 250 kilowatt hour in a 20-foot container, so around 500 kilowatt hour in a 40-foot container. It has grown steadily over last 10 years, and now we are seeing projects where people are deploying somewhere between 4 to 6 megawatt hour in a 40-foot container. So that itself has a huge benefit, particularly when you are looking at space constrained applications such as for distribution utilities where they cannot upgrade a distribution transformer and they are seeing a significant growth of the load in certain areas. So a lot of these are type of applications are coming in, where one thing I would like to highlight is that always when we see like a cost reduction curve like what Aditya has shown, people like to say, okay, should I wait for another 2 years or 3 years for deploying my application? But from leaders like AES, what they have done, it is probably the every price point what you saw on that cost reduction curve, they have actually successfully built projects at those price points and have made money doing that. So again, you need to understand the applications and requirements and choose the right technology, size it rightly, and then use it smartly.
And just to add to what Rahul said, yes, it is never the wrong time, I would say, to invest in batteries. All of our projects in the last decade have been successful, and rather I would say they have been more successful than we actually planned when we actually build those projects. So it is a misconception that you have to wait for the right time, because the way batteries are being used, and we are seeing that globally the cost of providing those services vis-a-vis the cost of batteries have been complementary. So it should not be seen that what the cost of service I'm providing today is expensive, right? Because by the time you actually go to the future, you would have already lost a lot of benefits which you would have accumulated during those years. So it is never the wrong time, it is always the right time. It is now.
Exactly, right? You can't really wait any longer. I just have to point out that, of course, all of those projections are based on EV batteries. So, it's likely, I don't know exactly how applicable really this would be to the cost of the batteries that we will be using. But anyway, we have 9 questions, guys. We have about 10 minutes. Let's see if we can get through them in that time, okay? Rapid fire. Okay, one of them, the first question asks you, okay, what kind of battery bank and what capacity and what cost? I think we've answered that. So we're going to move forward, because there is no point really going through the same stuff. There was a question here for you. Never mind.
Yeah, I responded to it.
You responded to it. Okay. Never mind. That it was like, we'll move forward from that. Guys, I'm glad that we're moving so quickly. I thought it was here, but you've already responded. The frequency support offered by the Delhi project is awarded in the form of capacity contract. Since 10 megawatts is too low to actually impact grid frequency. Question for you, Aditya.
Yeah, so this project is currently under no contract. So we have not actually, the market is not really that wherein it is very well accepted as a service contract. So the whole idea of this project to actually develop the market for those and develop the framework for those contracts. So currently we are, it's a service we are providing to the grid. And the idea is not to really get into a contract at this stage, but to prove that, this really makes sense. Going back to what we were discussing just now, just to clear that misconception that, is this the right time? We're trying to prove that, yes, this is the right time.
20 p.m.
Yeah. And just to maybe add on that, I think, again, I think as a country, I think, and industry, I think all of us are very grateful to AES for taking this step, because while we have been talking about some of these projects and giving examples from projects around the world, it is actually helping some of the policymakers to actually see a project operational and where they can visit and they can easily see that. And AES has this track record. So again, going back to 2008, where when AES built the first project in US, even in US, there was no frequency regulation market. In fact, that time we were having debates about should there be a 5-minute frequency regulation market, or should there be a fast pay for performance frequency regulation market. And AES, understanding the market landscape and how the regulations were going ahead, they actually built the project looking at that. And that was not the only project. They also found another opportunity in Chile, where they actually deployed a project at a coal plant, and Aditya can go into more detail of that. But this is something where in India, we are trying to educate people about, is that sometimes people think that, oh, we already have a coal plant, so why should we invest in a battery? But actually by integrating these, some of the newer technologies, even in the existing projects, we can actually operate the entire system in a more efficient way. And AES has already shown the way for this, and we are hoping that the project which AES has built in India, that would be just a starting point for a lot more projects built in years to come.
So don't wait. That's the message. Don't wait. Start your battery projects now.
Yes.
All right. The next question, is there an open frequency response market in India? How does the TSO procure? What are the length of contracts and what are the prices?
So right now there is no open market, although Central Electricity Regulatory Commission has already provided a roadmap for procurement of ancillary services. They have already started procuring what is called as a fast tertiary services, where they are procuring spinning reserves from some of the conventional resources. The fight what we as the India Energy Storage Alliance and other industry players are having with the regulators is somehow they are right now limiting participation in providing these services only to existing thermal and hydro generators, and they are not actually opening up this opportunity to storage, thinking that it is going to cost a lot more. Whereas what we are trying to convince them is that everywhere around the world, wherever they have had deployed such projects, it is not that they had to do this project just for storage as a separate category, but storage has actually competed with existing technologies and have emerged as a lower cost solution or better solution for providing the same services. So that's something where, again, I think the AES project, we hope will show the benefit of using storage and not just waiting for upgrading coal plants or increasing their flexibility to try to solve the grid problems. We just need less than 2 gigawatt of resources at a national level to improve grid frequency in India. Right now, the grid frequency in India fluctuates, as Aditya showed on one of the charts, from almost from 49.85 to 50.05. So 0.2 hertz frequency deviation, which is almost criminal in this day and age. If we are trying to build a strong manufacturing ecosystem, we have to have better power quality and reliability available to the customers for incentivizing manufacturing. And doing it for 2 gigawatt, even let NTPC or other thermal plants compete, and if storage can provide it in a better way, then let storage be it. Otherwise, we need to at least solve this problem quickly.
I completely agree with what Rahul said. You know, it is in every market we serve, we have always competed against every other technology, and we are quite confident that, you know, providing the right support, battery storage can actually provide you much faster and much cheaper rate. So there's no doubt, and we are quite confident on that.
Okay, we're not going to have time for all the questions. We have 5 open, but we're going to try for 2. Are there state of government tenders for solar and storage projects at the moment? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of tenders which are already there, and you know, you can actually check it on the online. They are there on the Solar Energy Corporation website. There are 2 live tenders currently. These are large tenders.
Do we know what the response from the market is?
Sorry?
The market has been quite positive about it. So in fact, so far there are more than 10 tenders which are there for varying capacity of it. And in fact, as the India Energy Storage Alliance, we maintain a dashboard of all the open tenders available and provide that information to the members. Unfortunately, that is available only for the members. But yes, there are a lot of opportunities there. There are some large opportunities, and like Aditya mentioned, where they are looking at 1200 megawatt of wind, solar, or hybrid with up to 400 megawatt hour of storage. So it is currently under expression of interest. But there are multiple other projects varying from a couple of megawatt hour to 100 megawatt hour, which are also currently in different stages of RFP.
Excellent. And for our last question, I'd like to go with the question about the business models, because I think it's important, you know, in the revenue stacking. So it says, was the Delhi project financed through AES own fund, or did you think the financial model for battery storage over the next decade is going to be, and what financial products are more desirable for developers. It leaves it quite open. I don't know who wants to start. Maybe you start, Aditya, and then.
Yeah, I'll start. So yes, the project has been completely funded by AES. I would say it's been partly funded by AES and partly by Mitsubishi. The financial model for BEST for next decade is, we are a developer, right? We don't see it any different from any other typical project. The challenge that we are facing right now, which is very typical to financiers, and that's another reason why we in every market we go, we try to do a project first by our own, because the challenge with the regulators, the policymakers, is similar to what the financiers see it. They don't want to take the risk on the technology. But yes, we are seeing acceptance of the technology. Globally, very recently, we are now close to getting some financing for standalone BEST projects. But I feel for a solar plus storage or any renewable plus storage project, this will become a component into the overall project, and there getting financing is easier. But yes, the financial products are still to be developed for this kind of technology, and which will only happen with the deployment. So it's like a chicken and egg. Unless you really see projects coming up, the financiers will not be very keen to take a challenge. But that paradigm is changing now, and we are already seeing large projects. There's a lot of interest from the developers, the development finance corporations. They are taking a lot of interest. They're supporting the initial stage wherein these projects are being funded by those funds. And once I'm pretty confident, once we reach this stage, it will be nothing different but from a normal project finance.
Sure. And just to add, as the India Energy Storage Alliance, we have been also working with some of the international funding agencies such as World Bank and Climate Investment Fund. Both of them have dedicated financing initiatives, especially for financing energy storage in developing countries. And in fact, World Bank is also working very closely with Indian government, where they have already announced a $1 billion financing package for financing energy storage in India. The details of it are currently getting worked out, but it would be done perhaps somewhat similar way how some of these earlier World Bank funding was used to support rooftop solar. So there are a lot of exciting things happening. We are seeing a lot of interest from even private equity and other players who want to get involved in the energy storage financing sector. So some of these business models are getting refined, and some of them may be slightly unique for India. But a lot of the things, innovation on the business model, which has happened around the world from likes of AES, RES, or Wärtsilä and others, is very much applicable to India. So we don't need to reinvent everything or need to wait for doing something completely new. We can actually use some of the existing models and structures and apply those in India as well.
Wow, 1 billion specifically for India with the World Bank, which is separate from the ESP. That they have
so I think
the
overall it is 3 billion. So out of 3 billion, 1 billion is getting allocated for India. And also there is some additional separate money which is also being made available for providing concessional financing for the manufacturing plants which are expected to come in under the Gigafactory mission. So again, some of these details are still getting worked out. I haven't yet seen the check for $1 billion, but people have told me it's on the way.
Call us. We'll go and celebrate.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, great news. Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you very much, Aditya, for your time. We've run out of the time allocated. Thank you very much for all our audience. And we will be keeping a close eye on this, and hopefully we'll be able to talk again in a few months to see how everything has evolved. So thank you very much, both of you, and thank you very much, the audience, and see you next time.
Thanks,
Namaste.
Belen. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.